Well, I think there's better ways to achieve the affordable housing numbers. I understand what she's saying. Having lived out there and knowing the area and knowing the cost of the development and seeing the cost and imagining years down the road, I have a hard time feeling really comfortable with the numbers that they're saying would be affordable housing. I think it's going to be very hard to attain those goals. I think it's laudable. I think it's going to be very difficult, though. In the meantime, I think there's a lot of things we can do locally with the county, such as preservation of mobile home parks, the single residency occupancy units, working within developer incentives within within the Eureka area before we go out with 1,400 homes in an area that's going to be hard to develop, that doesn't have the infrastructure. The fire service, I mean, there's no way you can have appropriate fire resources out there the way it's currently planned. There's just, it's a nice idea. It's getting busy out there. It's a nice idea, but I just don't agree that that is the one idea or the one reason to make the subdivision happen. I think Jimmy, we were actually talking today, Supervisor Smith and myself, and he really responds and listens to his constituents. He knows his constituents probably better than any other political person, elected official I know of. And he knows that to them, this project is not a good project. And that's where, he's willing to stand on principle and say, this isn't good.
Beyond the balloon track or Ridgewood, and whether those happen or not, what would you say, if elected, you would do in the next 4 years that would be most effective at creating jobs?
Most effective at creating jobs, other than the balloon tract and what we've talked about already. Well, having an open mind and putting the welcome mat out, I think, is really important. For some reason, Humboldt County has gotten a bit of a reputation for being not necessarily welcoming to new business. And I think it's going to take a measure of creativity, priority setting, what types of businesses do we want here? I want to see private investment so badly, because that's how, communities like Eureka, right now, our tax base is suffering. But when you have private investment and you have jobs created and you increase that property tax base and you've got that sales tax increasing, you're creating that tax base that pay for services like, public safety. So I think we've got to start being really creative. Earlier this week, I had the pleasure of talking with a gentleman who's representing, I guess you'd call it a think tank group. They're not polluting. They create papers about all they create, and they'd like to relocate here to Humboldt County. There's about 20 people. What can I do to help? Well, I can help send them to speak to our redevelopment agency. We will send them to the county. We will work. If we can make it happen, we will. But they've got to know that we want to make it happen. Last night I was in a meeting that involved the possibility of a shipyard in Fields Landing and some small shipbuilding. They're small container ships. And the concept, it's cleaner than trucking up and down, saves like $41 million, some incredible amount of wear and tear on the roads. It could be viable, but it costs money. Okay, so where do we find the resources? And I think part of it is just here's someone that really wants to come here. It's a clean environment. I mean, it's a green, I guess you call it a green business, a green industry. How can we help connect the dots? And I think we've got a lot of people who can do that, but we just don't always pull the resources together. It's almost like we have turf wars on, this is your project or this is our project. And I think part of it is working together, and if that means the county going to the city of Eureka saying, gosh, we can't make this happen, but can you make it happen? Going to Arcata, I just think it's, we've got to be creative. We're in this together. It's not just, it's not just one city having issues with their budget. The county's budget is in a very bad way, and it's not going to get any better. We've got to find ways to bring jobs. And I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but it's just being creative, being open-minded, and be willing to go out and pinpoint what it is we want. And it doesn't have to be 200 jobs at a whack. It can be 50 jobs, it can be 20 jobs. They all add up. You know, I'm real disheartened. I'd love to see freshwater pulp get up and running again. I know there have been some difficulties, and I hear, you know, it depends what week I'm asking. It sounds like it may or it may not. I mean, that would be a boon for this community, and I know not everybody likes the concept, but I think it's a much cleaner industry than it used to be, and it brings great jobs here. You know, the jobs focus, you got to get in and do the hard work and not just be a name on a piece of paper. So.
Well, I mean, do you think that budget assessment is fair, though, that Eureka and Arcata are both in trouble? Supervisor Neely said, of course, Eureka is facing a huge deficit and the county's budget is balanced.
Actually, the city of Eureka has had a balanced budget. Every year I've been there for 18 years. They've won the GFOA award from the agency that audits these budgets. And the county has a balanced budget. This is true. The city of Eureka wasn't easy getting there this year. But if you really dig into the County of Humboldt budget, you'll find that they've got a $5 million shortfall when they start the 2011-2012 year next year. Much in the same line as Eureka has a structural deficit. The county has that structural deficit because they used one-time funds to balance their budget. They used transfers from other funds. Many of the same unfortunate, choices that we've had to make, the county's made as well. And in fact, their reserves that are projected, well, the reserves are supposed to be at $6 million. And the reserve level is projected to end at $250,000 this year. Public safety cuts. Last time I talked with you, I was looking at the interview. There are like 22 frozen positions in the Sheriff's Department. There's 31 this year. The Sheriff's Department operations in total took an 11% cut. So there's many of the same, you can say, just like we can say, we balanced our budget. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't the best outcome that you'd like to have, but the county's in much of the same dilemma, and I would suggest that if you go on and get the budget off the internet, and I believe it's in summary section A, it has a lot of the, like the brass tacks. So I get a little hot about that because I think the city of Eureka, we did a really extensive job of community outreach. We had 17 meetings, and obviously you try to hear what the public says, and you try to base your decisions, as closely aligned with what you can make happen. And it's not perfect, and unfortunately, these are very trying budget times. But you do the best you can, and that's one of the reasons why you need private investment in jobs, so you can start kicking up that tax base again. In the county too, something that came up today, I was talking with someone about housing, home prices, and while some of us were thinking it was on the upswing, actually it sounds like there could still be some downtime with housing market prices. And when you think of that, it leads to property tax. And the county is pretty reliant on property tax. And if the property taxes go down and all these other budget issues are out there, I think for the county it's going to be a real trying time.
You mentioned green industry earlier. One green industry, of course, is the medical marijuana industry. Eureka just passed once.
That was very good. Okay.
And the county just approved a permit for the first dispensary in unincorporated county administered territory out in Myrtletown. They approved a permit for one, but then at the same time, practically another one, Hummingbird Healing Center, shut down. They said because they didn't have a conditional use permit, even though there's no ordinance saying they have to have one, and even though they said they applied for one and it had been clogged up in the county planning department for untold months. What do you think of how that whole process is coming down, and do you think the county really needs to get the let out and update their 2004 ordinance on medical marijuana to start regulating dispensaries like Eureka and Arcata have?
Exactly. It's funny, we were talking today, obviously I was trying to think, what are some questions Charles was going to ask? And that was one that came up a lot. And I was discussing with someone the city's ordinance, and the city of Arcata has their ordinance. And I think it's be very wise for the County of Humboldt to come up with a similar ordinance sooner rather than later. I got involved with the, I guess not friction, but the conflict kind of in the neighborhood where Hummingbird was set up. And Hummingbird, I went and toured it. It's a very nice facility, very clean, looks very well run, very nice people. But there's a belief that it's set up without a permit. And of course, we know where that's at now. There's not a clear process, and others say they didn't need a permit. So that's kind of like in limbo land. At the same time, the other place, now I can't remember the name.
THC.
Thank you. Applies for a permit. They're doing everything the right way to get the permit. But in the meantime, you've got the neighborhood who's 30, you know, these neighbors that are 30 feet away that are saying, what about me? No one's listening to us, or no one's worried about us, or, you know, with the traffic and whatever. You know, there was a myriad of concerns, and it was like, boy, if there was a process in place that people understood, it would certainly make it a lot easier. The city's ordinance, I think, is very well written. I really commend Council members Atkins and Leonard for working on it, and they worked really hard. I like the fact that, you know, I think the code enforcement portion will get the grow houses out of the city. That's one of our biggest issues is, you know, neighborhoods don't need to be taken over by grow houses. And so I think that was a very important part of that ordinance. But the dispensary part, I think, is really huge because it puts a limit and you're not having them spring up all over the place. And I think the County of Humboldt needs to move in that direction and perhaps should consider a moratorium like the city of Eureka did. You know, it's not saying no forever, it's saying let's take a break and get this right, because when you've got, you know, people opening up over here, neighbors not having their concerns addressed or even having a mechanism to really be heard, there's a lot of issues there that could get really ugly, and I just think it makes for a clearer process. So I would certainly like to see the County of Humboldt move forward with that. I know they're working on it. I'm not sure, you know, what their time frame is, but I'd suggest that, you know, to follow our lead and do the moratorium and then go from there.
All right, Virginia, do you have anything else you'd like to tell the voters at the end of the polls this November?
Well, I think I'd end it with, you know, Humboldt County is a great place to live, and I believe it can be even better. And only with your vote and your support can I work to make it a better place for all of us to live. In fact, we can work on this all you know, it's about being together, working together, because we all want the same thing. So I would just say, like I ended last time, vote. Be sure to vote, because if your voice isn't heard, you're not represented. So you got to get out there and vote. So that's how I'd end it. Be sure to vote November 2nd. And hopefully you won't be having many of us knocking on your doors nonstop for the next 2 months until then.
All right, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks. Hi, Charles.